So you're probably aware that Brad Wong has been posting in people's chats. Seems that Jack and Lily may have possibly found their knight in shining armour. The person we least would have expected, or the person we didn't even know existed until recently, but who seems quite willing to speak up for Jack and Lily in terms of speak up about what he knows. The fact that Daniel feels so threatened by Brad Wong's existence, the fact that Daniel feels so threatened by Brad actually saying what he knows, says to me that this is something significant. Ever since those parts of the documents were released, Daniel, Durwood, and others in that little group, or perhaps not so little group, have been going out of their way to try and discredit Brad and Justin, which to me says that there's definitely something in what they heard and what they saw. Now, like I said, Brad's been going into people's chats and making comments in chats, clarifying information and adding additional information. And he said something quite interesting in Sunny's chat the other day, which I will come to shortly. But before I do, I want to go back over just quickly what we know so far, and also what's been said since all the information came out. Now, before I do, I just want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers who've joined my channel, and also say, if you are someone who likes my channel and you've not yet subscribed, you would be helping me greatly if you did subscribe. I'm aiming to hit 7,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Not sure if that is possible, but I would like to try. I also want to ask people to hit the like button, because when people hit the like button with my video, that tells YouTube that it's worth recommending my video, and it helps me get more views. So, with all that out of the way, let's just jump straight in. Okay, so I'm going to start with Justin, and we have him saying that on Thursday night into Friday morning, he was up until around 1 a.m. on Facebook. Around 1:30 a.m. he heard a car on Highway 289 turn around by the railroad tracks near the area of Gerlock Road and Lansdowne Station Road. It made noise, then went quiet. The vehicle was quiet for about 2 minutes, then drove towards Legg Road. Now, I just want to remind people that when it comes to witness statements, it is based on their perception of the world, and sometimes your brain is filling in the gaps. Now, I'm not saying that Justin didn't hear these things, but I've noticed that a lot of content creators are getting hung up on the exact locations of the vehicle, getting hung up on this notion that the car had to have been on Highway 289 and it had to have turned at the railway road tracks near the area of Gerlock Road and Lansdowne Station. And I've said this before, but in terms of this witness statement, the best that we can take away from this is that this is the approximate direction that he heard the vehicle travel in. He only heard it, so he can't say that he's certain that it was travelling on 289. It could have been travelling on the Pipeline Trail. He can't see it, or he couldn't see it, so he doesn't know where it turned around. He's filling in the gaps based on where he could hear the sound coming from and the duration of the sound, how long it was going in one direction, how long it was stationary or appeared to be stationary, and then how long it came back in the other direction or headed back in the other direction. Now, let's say, hypothetically, You hear the vehicle moving in a direction that is away from where you are, and you think it is stationary. Maybe it is going along a road parallel, so the distance hasn't changed. Maybe it is stationary. But your brain is filling in the gaps and thinking about what is the most logical conclusion. So we can't say that it is set in stone that he travelled on 289 and that he turned around at the area near Gellock Road and Lansdowne Station Road. That's only what his brain is doing in terms of filling in the gaps. Like I said, at best, we can say he heard the vehicle travel in one direction, he heard it go quiet for a while, and then change direction. Or change direction, then go quiet, and then head towards Leg Road. Going quiet could mean simply that it was out of his earshot. There's many possibilities for what this vehicle could have actually been doing. Okay, the next part is hearsay, but it's still interesting. He later spoke with Brad Wong, who informed him Daniel's vehicle came and went 5 or 6 times that night. Wong said the car Smith heard was Daniel. People have argued this side of it. How can he know it was Daniel's car? Ask anyone who lives in a rural area. You know the sound of your neighbours' cars. So I have no problems with accepting this. Now, one of the arguments that came out very, very quickly after these bits of information came out was, oh, well, look at this. Brad has influenced Justin and got him to make up this story. But we know that is not the truth.
We just got a call from a Justin Smith who lives close by to where you guys are now. He said he can talk to members about any vehicles that passed on Highway 289. If you guys need to get a hold of him, I can always send his number down to you guys if needed.
So you have it quite clearly in the afternoon of May the 2nd, where Justin Smith made contact and he said, I can speak to investigators about vehicles going along 289. That is no coincidence. He's talking about the vehicle that he heard overnight. I just want to point out something important also, because another thing with Daniel's misinformation campaign is this story claiming that Justin Smith was staying at the campground nearby. Well, you heard right there on the dispatch where she said he lives near where you are located. He was at his home. I've covered this in another video, and I suspect that probably the reason that Daniel doesn't want people to know where Justin actually was located is because it's an inconvenient location for him, because Justin is in a good position for a witness. There's also a new rumour going around that, Justin's moved 50 kilometres away, which is supposed to make it sound like, he's guilty, he's moved away. A, we have no confirmation of that. B, so what? He didn't have anything to do with the case. If he moved, it was probably because of his neighbours. Okay, so moving on to Brad Wong. And he said he did not wish to provide a statement, but was willing to have a conversation with police. People have jumped all over that too, and honestly, I have no issues with that either. If you have dodgy neighbours all around you, like the Mackenzies and the Martells, then yes, you probably were wanting to stay as far away from the situation as possible. We also know that he does have a bit of a criminal background, which doesn't, in my mind, discredit him as a witness here because we have a second witness. But it may be that it made him a bit nervous. So what he said was in the early hours of May 2nd, 2025, he heard a loud vehicle coming and going in the area of 1407 Gairloch Road. He said his residence is at an elevated position from Daniel's residence and he could see the vehicle lights over the treetops. He said the vehicle left 3 or 4 times after midnight and into the early hours of the morning. He said the vehicle would drive off in the distance and he could hear it stop and then return. He said it remained in earshot the entire time. Now, yes, this is old news, but now Brad has offered a bit more detail about all this. So what he said to clarify things in Sonny's chat was that basically he believes that Daniel left his driveway 4 times, came back 4 times in total. But the last time he did not come back with a loud vehicle. So the suggestion here is that after doing whatever it was he had to do, he did a vehicle swap. There was some reason why he needed that vehicle to not be on the property. Why was that vehicle swapped out? Because that's what appears to have happened. Now, to possibly answer that, I want to have a look at a few more things. First of all is a portion from the chat that Daniel did on that turkey show.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people might say, oh, well, this is going to your uncle's house. Maybe you planted them. I find it weird. I don't understand why somebody would plant evidence that's leading to the direction of a...
I've never actually seen the actual location of the footprint in real life.
Yeah.
So, I told investigators this, and I've never seen the actual blanket hanging in the tree. I've never seen that.
Gotcha.
Now, throughout this interview, they've had this real conversational tone. Just these two blokes chatting away. Nothing real stressful. But yet, the moment this turkey guy suggests that, hey, you know what, the blueprints and the blanket, that could actually be leading towards your uncle's house. And he's saying, people might suggest that this is the case and that they were planted, but why would you plant those things? But what we see here is something we have not seen from Daniel before. So he's saying, it's going towards your uncle's house. And straight after he says your uncle's house, we get a long blink from Daniel. And then he continues to blink a little bit more than you would expect as this turkey guy goes on. And the turkey guy says, people might think maybe you planted them. And we get the lizard tongue come out straight after he said that. Again, a little bit of deception going on here. And then this is where we get something completely new from Daniel. So the turkey guy starts saying, he was giving Daniel excuses the whole way through this interview. We know this. It's so frustrating. And he starts saying, I don't understand why someone would plant evidence that's leading towards, and we didn't hear the rest, because for the first time, Daniel actually butted in and spoke over the top of him. And you could hear in the tone of his voice, he was agitated. Discussing the fact that these things point in the direction of his uncle's house caused agitation for Daniel. Now, I do believe that the boot print up on the pipeline probably was planted, but I honestly do not believe the blanket was planted. I believe that got there accidentally. I may be wrong, but there's a heck of a lot of fuss over this blanket, and there's a real push by Daniel and his family to accuse Hayley and her family of planting the blanket. And Daniel has changed his lies over that blanket multiple times. In this turkey show, he basically tried to lead people to believe that the blanket was planted after the school bus went through, before Haley and that reported it. And you hear him say that specifically. The thing is, when you look at the documents, and this information came out after he had said this, the blanket was discovered before the bus went through. So that completely destroyed his story there. So now I've heard that the latest version that we're hearing is that actually they checked the buses from the morning run and didn't see the blanket on the morning run, and that it was planted between the morning run and when it was found. So he's completely changed his story, and people are jumping up and going, see, look, the blanket was planted because it wasn't seen on the morning run. But they're forgetting that his original story was that it wasn't seen on the afternoon run. Forgetting that actually the afternoon run would have shown people in the vicinity of the blanket because it had already been reported. So all of a sudden, we have Daniel becoming incredibly agitated over discussion of things pointing in the direction of his uncle's house. Now, going back to what I was saying about the witness statements about the vehicle, your brain fills in the gaps. So Justin Smith could really only be certain of direction of travel. He could not be certain that the vehicle was on 289. Like I said, it could have been on the pipeline track. He could not be certain of the location where it turned. And depending where he's located, him saying that it went quiet for a while and then came back towards Legg Road, given that in Brad's statement, Brad says that the vehicle never really stopped, it was just stationary. So that suggests to me that maybe Justin just didn't hear the vehicle for a period of time, and what he thought in terms of it turning near the train line could have been the vehicle turning onto Lansdowne Road. So Brad clarifying and saying that when whoever it was that was driving returned for the final time, they returned in a different vehicle, is really, really interesting. Because there was an article that came out from the Globe and Mail. This article was from the 8th of August, and they were talking about life at Lansdowne Station. One of the things they discuss is the overnight raid on Earl's property between the 2nd of May and the 3rd of May. It was actually the early hours of the 3rd of May. And you can actually hear in the dispatch, you probably noticed that I've been going through and getting all the dispatch, because while Paula did a absolutely fantastic job in the early days of getting the dispatch, not being familiar with the case, there's a lot that got left out. So I've gone through, and I'm still working on it because there's a lot there, but I've been getting all the dispatch and basically time-stamping it. And you do hear them talking about the raid on Earl's house. So this article is discussing that. And it's saying that the officers peered with flashlights into the corners of the living room, jumbled with the craft supplies, blah, blah, blah. And you hear in the dispatch that they also interviewed Earl at that time. But what is significant here is the comment, Earl guided police into the yard to old campers and a derelict log cabin filled with junk, and to Daniel's older model black sedan in need of repairs he couldn't afford. So, on the night of May the 2nd, the night after the children were reported missing, I can't say went missing because I believe they went missing on the Thursday night, but on the night after they were reported missing, Daniel's vehicle was parked at Earl's place, meaning that it wasn't at 1407 Gerlock Road. So is this what Brad heard? Did he hear Daniel going back and forth between 1407 and between Earl's house? And the final trip, Daniel left his car there for some reason maybe evidentiary, and then took Earl's vehicle back with him. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of speculating here, because it seems that Daniel's vehicle has completely vanished since May. He's very carefully avoiding discussing it, and he won't answer direct questions about his vehicle. He's also been incredibly defensive over Brad Wong, saying that he could hear Daniel's vehicle specifically. So my first question is, where is Daniel's vehicle now? But here's the other thing. There was a bit of chatter recently about Daniel getting a new vehicle. I believe this is something that Daniel claimed himself, that he got a new vehicle and that it got towed from the property. Now, I don't know what the full story is there, and I haven't got screenshots for that, so this is basically jumping into the realms of hearsay right now. But people were questioning how, given that he was originally only working 1 day a week at the mill, and that he was telling media that he couldn't work because of the stress. So people were questioning how he could possibly afford a new vehicle. And my question is, was his vehicle insured and something happened to it? Because obviously, if your vehicle is such a clunker that you can't afford the repairs for it, then you're not going to get a decent trade-in for it. The only way you're going to get anything worthwhile from that vehicle is if it ended up being a write-off and you got paid out in insurance. So I'm going to do a little bit of speculating here. This is nothing more than an opinion. This is from a discussion I've had with a few people in the background. I'm just sharing an opinion that's been put out there. I'm not making any allegations here. But first of all, when we heard Janie's Facebook audio for the first time, she made this really, really curious comment that has bugged me from the beginning.
And thank you, Ken. You'll know what it's about. I appreciate that. So I'm going to take off now.
Now, when Janie made that comment, at that point in time, Kent was all up in Sonny's chat and even going on panel and talking, and seemed like he might have been a decent guy. People seemed to be quite respectful of him. But, coincidentally, he appeared around the same time that Durwood did. But I found it really odd that Janie felt the need to go out of her way to thank Kent. Why would she need to do that? Janie's not the sort of person that actually tends to think much of other people. So whatever Kent did must have been something quite significant that helped her out, something that was worth Janie putting away her disdain for the world and actually saying thank you to Kent. So here's the thing. Kent and Durwood both deal in used vehicles. You've seen some of the ads that have been shared recently from Durwood selling vehicles off that are less than what you'd want to get. Vehicles that look like they are complete utter clunkers that would probably fall apart the moment you tried to drive them. And we also know that Kent had a scrapyard and a garage. And if you look through his Facebook, you can see that he also used to do a bit of panel beating in that garage. Did Kent or Durwood maybe take Daniel's car and junk it so that it couldn't be examined for evidence? Was there some sort of evidence connected to that car? Why did he need to bring back Earl's vehicle, potentially? Why are we hearing that the vehicle that finally returned to the property early in the morning before the children were reported was a different vehicle from the one that was doing the runs? And why is Daniel avoiding discussing that vehicle? Why is there no sign of that vehicle now? Was it stripped for parts? Or maybe there was another way of getting rid of it. I have to say, sorry, but I do not trust Kent. I've read a lot of things in the last couple of days where people have pointed out that the fundraising money has gone missing, and where other people have pointed out that one person said that their donation, or the money they spent, which was about $1,000, they really had to fight to get that money back off Kent. So he's not Mr. Perfect Citizen. And we have a shed go up in flames a month after Lily and Jack went missing. And it contained customers' vehicles. Allegedly, the business itself wasn't insured and only the customers' vehicles were insured. But if you have a look back through the Facebook page for that business, you can see that in the 36, 48 months leading up to this fire, they seem to be spending a lot of extra money on the business, buying a new hoist for vehicles and selling off the old one. And at one point in time, they're talking about their storage business and saying, look, we haven't got the new building up soon, but we will have it up soon. So there seems to have been a lot of extra money poured into this business prior to this fire. Now maybe that's just a coincidence. But also, Janie thanking Kent. Even if this fire was an accidental fire, what if one of those vehicles in that shed happened to be one that was in need of repairs, or one that needed to be kept out of sight for a while? Pure speculation, of course, but we are starting to see that there are close ties between Durwood, Daniel and Kent. We are starting to see that, in fact, Kent hasn't been quite so virtuous when it comes to the fundraising. He's not exactly the model citizen that he would have us believe. Now, like I said, we can't really, that's all speculation. I'm not going to go any further with that. But the big question here is, why are we getting this story from Brad that the last trip that vehicle made during that night, the vehicle was left somewhere and a different vehicle returned to the property? And then we see this article in the Globe and Mail in August talking about Daniel's car being at Earl's place because he couldn't afford the repairs. And more importantly, or perhaps just as importantly at least, you have him becoming extremely anxious and suddenly having to butt in and talk loudly over the top of this turkey guy the moment this turkey guy happened to mention the connection between these items that were found, the blanket and, well, not items, but the blanket and the boot print, pointing towards his uncle's place. And we know his uncle's place is right next door to his father's place. Daniel did not answer that question when it was brought up. Instead, he got super defensive and said he's never seen the location of the footprint in real life. And he's never seen the actual blanket hanging in the tree. But he was stuttering his way through that. He couldn't even get his words out all that clearly. He was aggravated. This one time when he becomes so aggravated he has to butt in and talk over the person who is interviewing him and do that loudly. And then he stutters through his response and he doesn't address what is being asked. He did not address the possibility of those things pointing in the direction of his uncle's house. All he said was, I never saw them. I never saw the location of the boot prints. I never saw the blanket in the tree. And then the turkey guy just went off on a tangent and stopped that conversation completely. So I think that either Ron's house or Earl's house is extremely significant in this case. And I think Daniel doesn't want us looking in that direction. If that piece of blanket wasn't planted, and like I said, I don't believe it was, then it leads us straight towards two properties connected very, very closely to 1407 Gairloch Road. And how much time and effort has Daniel put into trying to convince people that that piece of blanket was planted? That it didn't get there accidentally? And why would you need to do that other than if that piece of blanket was pointing to a location that you didn't want people to look at? We know that Janie was back and forth on the phone with her brother the morning that the children were reported missing. We know that Earl Martell was extremely aggressive with Tint when he was just trying to fly a drone over the area. You saw in a video a few weeks ago that I did that Earl was selling his John Deere that he'd had for a very, very long time. But all of a sudden, it was on his driveway for sale. I showed you a screenshot from one of the early news articles where you can see Earl Martell at 1407 and heading into the house behind detectives. He might want to pretend that he's got nothing to do with this, but it seems like he has. And after the information came out about the witnesses with the cars, suddenly Earl pops up on Facebook with all these really, really defensive and possibly threatening messages. So I have questions for Daniel. Why did you suddenly become aggravated? Why, for the first time ever, did you suddenly have to talk over this turkey guy when he started talking about these things that were found pointing towards your uncle's property, the property that's right next door to your father's property? Why are you trying to avoid any discussion of your vehicle? Why do we have no idea where your vehicle is? Why are you attacking Brad and Justin so heavily? Why are you trying to convince people that Hayley Ferdinand planted that piece of blanket? What's the real story? And I guess we could probably add into that, why is Logan Mackenzie, Ron's daughter, so heavily invested in this case? So I know there was a little bit of speculation towards the end, something that I don't normally do quite so much, but certainly there's a lot of questions here, questions that need to be answered. And I do plan on putting together a video in the future where I do a focus on all the things that I believe point to Lansdowne Road, specifically to Earl or Ron's properties. So on that note, I'm going to leave it there. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button. Like I said before, it helps get these videos out there into the algorithm. And please leave a comment below. What are your thoughts about this missing car? What are your thoughts about the new information we have from Brad that it wasn't the same car that returned to the property on the last round? So on that note, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.